fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Well, you're back in the House of Mystery, and we are continuing our series. We have another author and contributor as well as editor for the Larceny Last Chances, Superior Shores Anthology, and it's book 4. It's 22 stories of mystery and suspense. Judy Penz Sheluk, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Alan.
Well, listen, Judy, being as you're an editor for this as well as a story contributor, how do you go about selecting of the submissions you get? Because you can only pick like so many stories, of course. Do you have a particular way of doing that?
Yeah, so I cut the submissions off at 80 because I knew I'd have about 20 stories or so that gives everybody basically a 1 in 4 shot, right? And also because I don't want to read more than 80 stories, quite frankly. What I do is, as a story comes in, I log the name of the author, the story, and the word count. And when I read it, I read them basically as they come in batches. Maybe 3 in a day or whatever. And then what I'll do is I'll just make a little note. I'll put, stolen necklace, two-timing husband, whatever, something just to remind me what the story was about. And then I have 3 columns, probably, maybe, no. Okay, so some are no's right away. It doesn't mean that they're not necessarily a bad story. It's just that they have to meet the theme. And in this case, the theme is larceny and last chances. So if there's no larceny and there's no last chance, then they haven't met the criteria. So it doesn't matter how good the story is, it doesn't fit, it's a no, right? So those are the easy ones. And then once I get, I would say the first, out of 80, the first 40 to go no are the easiest because, they've either done something that doesn't work or they ignored something, like if I say don't go over 5,000 words and they send me 8,000 words, or it's filled with profanity and I said no profanity or like limited profanity, that sort of thing. And then I'm left with like 40 stories, which I like. And then what I do is in this case, I had a librarian from Ontario Library, Whitby Public Library, Andrea, and I sent her the stories and I said, read them and tell me if you think A, did they meet the criteria, and B, did you like them, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to like the story. And so what I found was with the exception of 2 stories, both of which made it into the collection, we were basically on point with all the stories that I felt were the strongest. 2 of them, she felt maybe didn't quite meet the theme, and I felt that they did. So in the end of the day, I'm the editor, so I said they were getting in there. Because she agreed they were really good stories. She just wasn't sure. But I think because she was taking the theme super literally, and I think you can, like a last chance doesn't have to be, like in one of the stories, the protagonist is quite young, like she's like 14 or 15, and so she's like, well, it won't be her last chance. Well, of course not. She's 15. She'll have lots of last chances, but it's her last chance at this particular moment in time, right? So sometimes you can be too literal with it. But that's basically the process. It's a lot of work, and it's subjective, right? But I don't care who the author is. I don't care if they won 25 awards. None of that matters to me. I don't even care if they're a friend, and I turn down friend. It doesn't matter. To me, do I like the story? Does it fit the theme? Does it have a good beginning? Does it have a good ending? Does it make sense?
So tell us, who was the bad ones? Come on, give us some information.
Oh, I'm not telling you the bad ones are. Absolutely not. We're not telling. And the reality is, just because it's not good for this anthology doesn't mean it's not good for another anthology, right? It's just that it didn't meet my theme. There were a couple, I'll admit, like I know that, I believe it was either Left Coast Crime or Malice had or could have been VoucherCon even, but somebody had an anthology that had to do with Seattle. which is why I'm thinking it might be Left Coast Crime, but I don't think they do an anthology. Well, the criteria was that you really had to include Seattle or the environs in the story. And so I know that they selected very few stories from unknown authors. And I had a couple of submissions that had a lot of Seattle in them. And so I was thinking, okay, you were rejected by the other anthology. Now you're sending it to me, which is okay because, stories get rejected all the time. But my advice to those people when I rejected them was to say, it's okay to try to sell your story somewhere else. We all do that. I've been rejected and then sent a story somewhere and been accepted. But make a modest effort so it doesn't hit the other person over the head, basically saying this was a reject, because it was just so obvious. Do you know what I mean? There were just too many references to Seattle. That would be an advice I would give anybody. Just if you get rejected, try to spruce it up before you send it to the next guy, kind of thing.
I love the rejections. In fact, I get turned on, and I actually had Dave pour hot wax on my back.
Yeah. Let's face it, writing, you get rejected. You just do. And it doesn't mean the story's not good or that you're not good or you're not worthy. It just means that for this particular collection, it's not going to work, right? Or sometimes it comes down to there's two stories and they both have a stolen necklace, say. Well, you can't have two stories with a stolen necklace because that would be boring. So then you have to go, well, which story do I really like better? Well, maybe you like them the same. So then you're like, okay, well, I have a lot of stories with 5,000 words, but I don't have really many at 3,500 words. This story has 3,500 words. It's the winner. It can come down to that.
Well, how did you come up with the theme? What inspired you to put out an anthology with this theme?
So you're not going to believe it. White Christmas, the movie White Christmas. Okay, I love that movie. Mm-hmm. I've seen it.
Watch it every year.
Yeah. Oh, I watch it at least once every year. We all fall the old man. Anyway, I love that movie. Anyway, yep. So I know almost every line in that movie because I've seen it so many times. And there's a line where Bing Crosby says to Rosemary Clooney when her sisters tried to pull a scam on saying that their brother sent an invite or whatever, and meanwhile he's in Alaska. But he says, don't you know that everybody's got a little larceny running in their veins? And so when I watched that again, I thought, oh, that's good, larceny. And then I love alliteration, like I had Heartbreaks and Half-Truths and, Moonlight, Misadventure. So I was like, larceny. And then I was like, Last Chances. And then I thought, you know what? White Christmas, the movie, is really about last chances for everybody.
Right.
So it really is. Like if the underlying theme there is last chances. So I just thought, yeah, that's so basically it's an old 1950s Christmas movie. You never know where you're going to get inspiration.
That's for sure.
Now, so you also put a story in, and of course, I guess you approved your own story, right?
Well, yes. Goes without saying that I get a pass. But no, I did run the story by Andrea as a blind story, right? Like not telling her that I had written it. I put some phony name, Victoria Smith or something, right? And so she liked it. So I was like, oh, okay. And so then after that, I said, well, actually, that's my story, but what would you recommend? And so she had a couple of recommendations. And then the editor I worked with on my two publishing books, Emily, I said to her, would you mind reading it and editing it? Because I can't edit my own work. You just can't, like I would you miss things in your own work. You just do. And so she was kind enough to do a read and an edit. And we made a couple more, minor fixes as you do, and there you go. So I actually think it's one of my best stories, but of course I always think that after I've written a story. But I do think this is a very strong story.
So your story is the Last Chance Coalition. So what's the premise? What's the premise of that?
So the premise is that an author, a writer, has been sort of harboring a grudge against an editor who humiliated her at a writers' conference 7 years before. And she sort of never really let it go, And so she festering about it, but she realizes in talking to other writers that this particular editor has kind of screwed over a few people in his time, like not just her, right? And so she realizes, like, if she's ever going to get on with her life, she has to let it go. But she can't let it go unless she can get even with this guy. So she sort of forms this ad hoc group of people that have, this guy has not been kind to, and that they become the Last Chance Coalition. And they do get their comeuppance. He does get to live, so I feel that was quite kind of me. And part of it is actually loosely, and I do mean very loosely, based on an experience that I had at a conference where I was humiliated, and I have been festering it for 7 years. So on him.
Okay, and do you want to give us some names?
No.
You won't tell anyone.
I don't. But and unlike that, I don't think he'll know that story's about him. It's not like you're so vain or whatever. But it's just one of those things. It just sort of rankled. I mean, in hindsight, I'm sure he wasn't trying to, be horrible, but he was. And so all these years later, it's just always bothered me because he wasn't very professional. And so I sort of value that above anything else, like professionalism in the writing world. I think it's really, really important in the world in general. But certainly, I think as editors, we owe it to writers to treat them with professional courtesy, right? And he didn't. And so I got even with him, and it was really quite fun.
Wow, there we go. Now we're finding out the true Judy.
Surely you've gotten even with people when you've done writing. I mean, you just do. So much.
Everyone's lovely. Just everyone. So this is the fourth book of the anthology. So there's been 3 before this, right?
That's correct, yeah.
So how are anthologies going? Do you find that people are really receptive to them?
You'd be surprised. I think there's definitely more interest in them now than there was, like, when I started as a writer. Like, one of the reasons I do the anthologies is because I got my start in an anthology as a writer, and I appreciated that so much. It gave me this sense of that I was validated, like somebody wanted my story, and I felt really good about that. So I wanted to pay that forward because I've had some success, and so I wanted to sort of pay that sort of good feeling forward, right? The first one was called The Best Laid Plans, and it really was an experiment, but it's done very well. It's like these things don't break even in the first week or two because they're still niche, but it's definitely probably tripled what I invested in it, which is to say, we're not talking Stephen King money here, but, at least I've recouped my investment and made a bit of money on it. And I pay all my writers, they all get paid. And I pay the cover art and I pay editors. So, even after all of those expenses, I'm still, earning a small profit. So I don't really count my time. And I guess if I did, I'm not making any money. But that's the case with any writing, really, isn't it? They've done pretty well. I think there's more of an appetite now for short because people have short attention spans. Not too many people want to read an 80,000 word book anymore. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have good attention spans. So I think an anthology is great because you can pick up the book, you can read a story, you can put it aside, you can pick it up in 3 weeks, read another story. It doesn't matter, right? You don't have to read the same every day. So I think there's more of an appetite for them. This one's doing remarkably well, I think, because the cover is really good. And covers help sell books, as you know, right? But yeah, it's doing really well, and it's gotten some good reviews so far. So hopefully the sales will continue to be strong. It's a great group of authors. They're all really good about helping with marketing and promotion. And you don't always get that because, they get their payment and then they're on to the next, right? Because I just pay them outright. There's no incentive for them to continue to promote because they're not going to get any more money. But yet they're doing it. So it's a really good group of authors. this time for sure. They're really, really working hard to make it a success, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, but if it's not Stephen King money, then I'm not doing it. What are you talking about?
I'm still waiting for the Stephen King money, but yeah, it's not so far.
Dave's taking it. The check's going to him.
Is it?
Yeah,
I wish you knew.
Yeah, yeah. He's taking all the money.
I thought
right?
Al
So.
was on Stephen King money, but apparently.
Oh, please, no. I pay people. I have to do bad things to get things done. So at the end of the day, but what is it you want people to get away from the book? What do you want them to take away? Is it purely entertainment?
Yeah, it's definitely entertainment. And what I would say is that it's really interesting to see how every author took that theme and interpreted it in a completely different way, right? So yeah, I got a lot of stories about jewelry, heists, but I got so many unique takes on it and different, like there's protagonists that are 15 and protagonists that are like 70. Do you know what I mean? Like it's all over, and I'm just amazed at how the imagination of people. And so I would say if people are reading it, just read it and see how somebody's taking something simple and manipulated it into a story, which is fiction.
Let's talk about how people find you, find the book, find everything. So what's the social media? What is the website?
So my website is judypenzsheluk.com. So my name.com, pretty easy. And the book can be found at books2read.com/Larceny. And books 2 is the number 2. So books number 2 read/Larceny. And that will take you to a page where there are links to Amazon, Apple, Kobo, Nook, etc., etc., etc. So it's available in print and in digital, and it will take you to the different places where you can buy it, where your favorite bookseller.
Well, fantastic. Of course, now we'll put that up, of course, on our website so people can find it. And we appreciate you here telling us about your new anthology. So, Judy Penz Sheluk, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Judy.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.